Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Andrew Capel. Let's get started. All right, welcome to another episode of the Why, What, How show. Still workshopping the name, but we'll get right started. And Ryan, welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Great. So Ryan, you have a really interesting background, from growing up. I think you grew up in the Maryland area. Now, I sense the accent a little bit. And so maybe the audience can decide for themselves. But then you spent some time in the Navy, and I think still involved with the Navy, and have been an entrepreneur for a while. So I don't want to steal any more of your thunder. Why don't you just quickly give us some cliff notes on your story so far, and then we'll talk about Talent Harbor.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that? It was probably like 2 months ago. I jumped in the back of an Uber and I forget which state I was, probably at some conference. And I was talking to the Uber driver and he was like, "You're from Baltimore." And I was like, how do you know that? Like I'm terrible at picking up accents. But I guess there is something there with the Maryland, but, yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show, Andrew. I mean, I think my story's kind of been all over the place. It's almost like two separate simultaneous tracks my entire career. So the last 23 years, I've been in the U.S. Navy, both initially as an active duty, and then I eventually transitioned to the reserves. But started out as a naval air crewman. I used to fly on MH-53 Echo helicopters and then did some test and development on 60 Sierras. Worked my way into a commissioning program. It was a bit bumpy. Like what I needed when I enlisted at 17 years old was like discipline and direction and all of those different things. And so it was a bumpy start, but we found the way. Got picked up for something called the Seaman to Admiral program, Stay 21. Got a commissioning, and then went and drove ships for a while out of San Diego. And then after 4 years of that, transitioned to the reserves and kind of doing the reserves things for the last 8 years. The other track, and I think you mentioned this, is entrepreneurship. And there's been, I think, probably more failure than success in entrepreneurship. But I also think that is entrepreneurship. Like the goal for me has never actually been the business itself, but the idea of creating, the idea of pulling incredible humans together, getting everybody aligned around some mission, some vision that is bigger than themselves, and then just going and crushing it. And so first company that actually found some scale, probably hundreds of companies or thousands of ideas, hundreds of companies, 15 probably LLCs, and but only 3 that have really taken off. The first one, Run for Your Lives, zombie-infested 5K obstacle course race. This was back in like the Tough Mudder, Warrior Dash, Spartan race days. We were like, hey, we can do something in this. Instead of just running around an obstacle course, let's make it post-apocalyptic, and then let's put 250 zombies on the course that are chasing you. So all of our participants wore a flag football belt, and they had 3 flags. And if they got to the finish line with at least 1 flag remaining, then they were alive, and they got a medal and all these other things. And then if they were dead, they got a funnier medal. They still got a medal, but a funnier medal.
Participation trophy.
A participation trophy. Congratulations, you are now a zombie. Was basically the award. And that was like my first real experience. So that company grew very fast. We scaled from 0 to 13 events in 12 months. And then in our third-ish year, we tried to do 23 events. We unfortunately hit a brick wall that year, and the company went bust. And that was like my first real lesson in, okay, like when you have a company that's going from 0 to 1 and has found product market fit, like it's probably good to bring in some people that know what they're doing. And those lessons kind of carry through to Hunt to Killer, an immersive murder mystery experience. Start off as a live event, got into subscription box, grew that $0 to $50 million in 6 years. We got into retail distribution, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. Sold that company last year, and my Vistage chair came to me. And I was also at the War College. There's a longer story with that, but he was basically like, "Hey, kid, you're not going to be able to sit still. I know you too well. And what I want you to do is go look at your P&L and pick your favorite line item." For me, it was people. It was the investment in people, development, growth, coaching, mentoring, everything people related. But there was this one line item, and it was like $1 million, and it was recruiting. And I just didn't understand it. The most important part of any business is people. The hardest part is also people. It's finding the people, it's bringing them on the team, it's acclimating them to the team, it's keeping them motivated, inspired, focused on whatever it is that the mission or that the company's trying to accomplish. But it's not worth 30% of first year compensation. And so I saw a gigantic opportunity here to come in and think differently about what is recruiting and what should the model look like, and what are kind of those core functions of recruiting to say, like, this is expert level recruiting. And that's what we did. We developed a service called Recruiting as a Service, and flat monthly rate, no contracts, no success fees, no nothing. And we just make expert recruiting accessible to small, medium-sized businesses. So that was a mouthful. That was a lot.
Yeah. I'm curious. So with Hunt to Killer, you had a mail order subscription. That sounds different than the Run for Your Lives. Was that an insight that you picked up, the emphasis on subscription with Talent Harbor?
It is. And like, you know, what's interesting is my first like taste of entrepreneurship was third grade, selling creepy crawlers in Mrs. Price's class. Miss Price shut me down. So that was a little disappointing, but like that, and I can almost draw a line from like that to lawnmower men making these pamphlets and taking them, dropping them off on neighbors, to shoveling snow, to selling t-shirts, to a 5-kilometer race. Like there's a line, and every time you pick up something. When Hunt to Killer started, it was a live event. And so we took the experience and expertise and we created this live event. And then the issue became we couldn't bring thousands of people together to stand around a crime scene. And so with Run for Your Lives, we could put 10, 15,000 people through in any given weekend. With Hunt to Killer, with our first event, we were at capacity at 600. And so it wasn't a scalable business. And so we looked and we said, well, what other business models exist that would allow us to scale this product? And subscription box, that was it. And so we pivoted into subscription box. We did some other exercises, like subscription boxes started bankrupting left and right, like 2019, 2020. And we realized a couple things. And that's when we pivoted into retail distribution, because we knew that we were eventually going to hit a peak and plateau on the subscription. That's a longer conversation, but it becomes prohibitive to acquire new customers, and then your churn catches up and you start coming down. And then with Talent Harbor, same thing. Like Talent Harbor, there is a real way to deliver superior service and not do it for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 per hire. And so, yeah, every time there's been like a tidbit or something that we've brought along with the next venture.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so at Hunt to Killer, you leverage recruiters, in-house or external or contract recruiters. And so like, was it just a painful experience, or you were just frustrated looking at the P&L?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So here's what generally happens. You have a small company, and small companies can't afford expert recruiters. So what do? They're sold on this idea of LinkedIn Recruiter and Indeed and ZipRecruiter. And so what they do is they go spend $100 a month, they post a job ad, and then the resumes start coming in, and they're getting 10, and then they get 100, and then sometimes they're getting 1,000. And now they have all these resumes, and they're like, what do I do with these resumes? And like, truly, like, expert recruiting is not just the identify what the organization truly needs. It's not just like, where do I source talent? It's also about the vetting. And just because you can go out and have a pool of 1,000 candidates doesn't mean that you know how to accurately decipher, vet, and eventually pick the right person. And so generally what happens is you get hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. This is what happened at Hunt to Killer. And then you start hiring, and then you're like, well, wait a minute. Like, why aren't things working? Why is our turnover high? Why aren't we hiring the right people? And it's because those don't actually solve the problem. You need to understand what recruiting is and have a core competency there. Then you go through the next phase. And unfortunately, until we came, like, the next phase was that leap up to, $30,000, $40,000 per hire. And we were probably around a $20 million company when we could comfortably afford that. And then we started using external shops. And just like anything in life, like it's hit or miss. And so there's some great recruiting shops and there's some not so great recruiting shops. And there was always this one. And I think at the time, she was an independent recruiter, and her name was Alana Burr. It still is Alana Burr. She's now my partner at Talent Harbor. Best recruiter we ever used. I mean, like the best. And then kind of that third phase is you can get to a point of where you can bring recruiting in-house, which we eventually did. And we built out that as a competency. We hired recruiters and we went from there. But there was just always a need between that, like, oh, I'm spending $100 a month and getting 1,000 resumes, and oh, like now I need to spend 40,000. And it's just this blue ocean of opportunity for us to come in and say, hey, we can do real good for great companies.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. It's not rocket science. It sounds frankly easier than some of your previous businesses. So why haven't other solution providers or service providers solved recruiting?
Because they're stuck. Like there's not much self-awareness in the recruiter space. One of our strategies for my LinkedIn profile was to go connect with a whole bunch of recruiters and just crap all over the industry. Yeah. And a big part of that was like just to get people talking and get people engaged and get people fired up. And like there is zero self-awareness. Like some of the things that people defend of like, oh, well, my fees are worth it and this is worth it. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not worth it. And I think there's this lack of awareness, and I think like they've been stuck. It's the same thing with the real estate industry. You know, before Redfin and everything else, like real estate, and my dad was a real estate agent. So I love real estate agents, and there's good ones out there, but why 7%? Who made that? Like, that's not physics. Some human a long time ago said it's going to be 7% commission, and then it just stuck, and nobody challenges because everybody's making a lot of money. And it's the same thing with recruiting. Everybody was making a lot of money, and it was a great thing for them, and it's not a great thing for the clients. It misaligns incentives. And you know, it's like Congress. Congress isn't going to vote to put term limits on themselves, and yeah. Same thing.
So it takes an outsider. Yeah, it takes an outsider, fresh perspective, and jumping right in. So I'm curious. So how long have you been running Talent Harbor, and what are some of the learnings you've picked up, and then what are you excited about for the rest of 2025?
Yeah, we've been doing this about a year and a half. So Alana has 25 years of recruiting experience. I mean, I've been hiring people for a while, but I wouldn't by any stretch of imagination call myself a recruiter. Like the recruiting operations in terms of EOS, that is her side of the business. Yeah, but just doing good work now for about the last year and a half. As far as like what's next, you know, there's just so much great stuff. Like I think a lot of people are scared of the technology that's out there because they're seeing and hearing a lot of things. Like there's the technology, AI, and everything else that's being weaponized, and like there's like fake resumes, there's fake people showing up to phone calls for interviews. Like there's some negative stuff that's happening. There will always be humans that need to exist in the recruiting process. Hiring people is very much a human thing. You need to understand a candidate's values. You need to understand what drives that human. And so like what's next? I think we can leverage a lot of great technologies to help make us even better and help drive efficiencies in. And that's stuff that we can continue to pass along to the client and continue to do great work.
That's great. Well, yeah, we want to wrap this up to give everyone their 15 minutes, and some of the time back in the day for the listeners. So how would you close it out? Like, what's your engagement model? How do you work with prospective clients?
Yeah, so we've got a whole proven process, and we operate on EOS ourselves. And, it starts with just a conversation. What are the needs? What are the pain points inside of the organization? We've really kind of found a sweet spot in sales roles. When you look at our model, our model is a flat rate each month. We publish pricing. That's something like there's been a big lack of transparency in recruiting. We publish our pricing right on our website, have a conversation, talk about the pain points. And if it's a natural fit, then we're ready to engage. And we start with a discovery call. That's about 60 to 90 minutes. And we do a deep dive into what are the organization's core values? Where are they today? Where do they want to be? And then from there, we get to searching. And our searches are really about active outreach to passive candidates. This, for some reason, has been a hot take. But the reality is your next best hire is most likely killing it at your competitor. They're most likely already employed somewhere else. And so real recruiting is sourcing from talent pools that aren't actively searching. And so for us, sourcing is picking up the phone, giving people calls, emails, LinkedIn, and seeing if they're ready to have a conversation.
Sounds a lot like outbound sales.
It truly is. And then you got to convince them, right? Because like people that are rock stars at the organization they're at, they're already well compensated. They're doing big things. They're already inspired. And so now you got to convince them to even have the conversation with our client. And so it's all sales, really.
Good. Well, yeah, everything's sales. Nothing starts until someone sells something. So Talent Harbor seems like a solid solution, and it's low risk. So that's we're not ready to hire just yet, but that's the plan.
There you go. Awesome. We'll be here.
All right. Thanks, Ryan, and thanks everyone.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks for checking out the show. Please follow along on YouTube, LinkedIn, and wherever you get your podcasts.